Good evening, televiewers. You're welcome to today's edition of Prime Hour, the first for this week. We are glad to have you in front of your screens to follow what we have in store for you. This evening, we are going to be looking at the management, supposed embezzlement and mismanagement of the funds allocated for the fight against COVID-19 in Cameroon, with information that some of the ministers who were given that responsibility to manage such funds are going to be auditioned to justify how the money was used. We equally are going to be answering the question as to whether young Cameroonians are their own problems. We are discussing this with our panelists who are seated already in the house with us. Tilarious Atia Azonui is a journalist and is going to be part of this edition of the program. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Leo. Thank you very much for inviting me to be part of the program. Good evening to the televiewers of Prime Hour and of my media Prime. I expect that it's going to be an enriching exchange given the cream of panelists that we have today.
Okay. We also are in the company of Lucas, all the way from Boya, Southwest Regional Capital. He's a member of civil society and owner of an NGO. Good evening. We are glad to have you.
Good evening, Mr. Leo. It's a privilege to be on the same panel again today to discuss issues that concern our nation. We believe strongly that it's going to help a lot for others to understand what is actually on the ground, because as a civil society actor, we have a responsibility to tell the people what is happening within the nation so that they too know where to position themselves with regards to information. Okay.
We are also in the company of Abdouraman Pefoura, who is representing the CPRN party led by Honorable Cabral Libi. Good evening, welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Leonard. Good evening to everyone here today. Good evening to all those who are all your televiewers. It's a pleasure, a great pleasure to be here again today, so as to talk to Cameroonians, to throw light on what is happening in our country today. So once more, good evening to everyone and happy to be here.
Okay, we're also in the company of Ndiwum Emmanuelle, who is a regular panelist with us out here. Good evening and welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Leo. Good evening to my co-panelists. Good evening to all Cameroonians and lovers of Prime Hour. I will send a special good evening to one of our fervent listeners and a viewer who is in Yaoundé, Madame Diana Lucina Koma, who have chosen this channel to be part of her life. That okay. Every evening she's already glued. So I think what we are going to discuss here today is going to shape the minds of Cameroonians more and more.
Okay. I'm sure, Eli, if there is a way to reduce the over embezzlement funds and not over, I see, yes, too over there. Can you just fix it if it's possible? But I'll start with you, Atia Tilarious. How do we explain that money that is meant to salvage the health situations of Cameroonians, money that is also given from out of the country, is not accounted for?
Well, we have a government that is made up of people who can eat the baby's food. We've seen them in the past eat the baby's food. This is not the first time. Funds that were meant to fight HIV/AIDS, that were supposed to go to the HIV/AIDS control committees that we had across the country, that money was embezzled. I think somebody is already paying for it behind bars, many of them. We know of somebody from Boya who was arrested, was detained. There are a couple of other persons, even the Minister of Health at the time is behind bars because they could not justify how they spent the money that was meant to fight HIV/AIDS. Well, the same is true for malaria and for other epidemics and that have the country has faced. It was expected that this would not be different because when you give groundnuts to a rat to keep for you, it's expected that the rat is going to pilfer some of the groundnuts. That is why when the IMF, Cameroon has a very bad record with loans. Because we collect loans and we misuse, misappropriate and embezzle the money. because Cameroon, according to the 2013 report by the National Road Council, CONAROUT, a kilometer of road in Cameroon costs 205 million francs CFA to pave, but the African average is 100 million francs CFA per kilometer of road. So you ask yourself, what is so special about Cameroon? So it tells you the network that is put in place to embezzle money. We have tenders boards in this country that before they sit, we see people in bars already celebrating, contractors celebrating in bars with tenders board members that they have won the contracts already. That is days before the tender boards need to award these contracts. So it is part of the network. And when IMF opened the window, when COVID came with all the economic shocks, you know, Cameroon was already facing a lot of problems, fighting Boko Haram in the far north region. The crisis in the northwest and southwest regions was also affecting the country's economy. And so IMF, understanding that it was going to be problematic for weak economies like Cameroon's to survive in the face of a pandemic that nobody mastered at the time, they opened the floodgates for people to apply for aid, for loans. And Cameroon, who has a very bad record with loans, used the opportunity and quickly went cap in hand to collect loans from the IMF. And the IMF, I think on the 4th of May 2020, approved a $258 million loan to Cameroon. And I think in October they also approved, they also gave support, and Cameroonians have also been supporting the fight against COVID. Remember they created the National Solidarity Fund, and Minister Paul Atanganji said President Biya even contributed, I think, 2 billion francs CFA into that fund. And we saw on TV how multinational corporations and other business persons in this country went and gave hundreds of millions into that fund. We saw how the World Health Organization has supported. We've seen support from China and from other business, international business friends and the friends of Cameroon, even from the United States. They've also given Cameroon support. And nobody has come out to give Cameroonians a clear picture of how much they collected in loans for COVID, how much Cameroonians contributed, how much the World Health Organization gave, how much China has given, and everything. Not only financial, but material, which Cameroonians should be able to understand that this is what Cameroon has got because of COVID. And how it has been managed, nobody was told this. It's only when Cameroon goes cap in hand to collect more money from the IMF that the IMF says, hey, come on, we know your record when it comes to money. Can we see how the money, the previous loans we gave you were managed? And that is why you see them rushing to organize and to carry out an audit. You see them, because it takes them like 10, 20 years to carry out such audits. Those who embezzled money for, is it Abatos or whatever, you know how long it took for them to fall into the dragnet. That's after rising to very juicy positions in government. They will now come to say, okay, in 2004, you did not manage money well. In 19, this and that. That's when Cameroon comes to do audits. So this one was precipitated by the fact that IMF needed to see the balance sheet so they can give Cameroon more money. And we are not sure this money was actually, this new loan that we need is actually to fight COVID, because Cameroon is trapped. We see a lot of projects here and there. So I think that all of this, all what we are seeing, the inviting ministers to pass before the audit bench of the Supreme Court, and now before the Special Criminal Court for auditioning, I think it's part of an entire network by the state to show to the IMF that, please, we deserve another chance. And also, newspaper reports suggest that there's a lot of infighting. People are now using the opportunity to settle scores, just like Cameroonians know that government ministers are always at loggerheads, and they will not miss any opportunity to settle scores with each other. Yeah,
Mr. Lucas Ng, how do we explain that we saw the outcome of those who tampered with monies that was meant for the fight against HIV/AIDS, and that in 2020-21 we still find ourselves trying to Pefoura what is given to assist those who are supposed to have been affected by COVID-19, or to engage activities that will prevent the greater majority of the population to be affected.
The major problem in Cameroon, which I've identified within a period of time, is the issue of accountability. You know, some time ago, the president came out and said, where is the proof of what you are saying concerning some of my ministers? And this actually gave the grounds to some of the ministers to think that there is always that room for they to embezzle. Now, no matter the money and no matter the source of the money, we are talking about what happened with the funds that were given for HIV/AIDS. Even though AIDS at the time was seen as the deadliest virus or disease at the time that would kill so many people within a short space of time, and these were actually money meant to buy drugs to prevent it or to see how they can manage the patients, yet they were still able to embezzle it. With the issue of COVID-19, most of these persons believe that since Cameroon is a state where when money is given to you, it will take longer period than expected to actually account for it. And you know, if IMF did not come out to say Cameroon has received a lot of money and they have not been accounting for the money which they have received to fight COVID-19, I want to believe that the IMF would have maybe, let me just say, foolishly given the money to the Cameroon government, because based on the Transparency International's report, it was very difficult for they to even have access to certain information. And from what Transparency International is saying, it's like, even though the IMF has called for the government to account for what they have given to them so far, because we have had philanthropists like Jack Ma, who also supported the Cameroon government. We saw a certain consignment that came in to Africa, and Cameroon was part of the beneficiaries within Africa. Yet, if we were to look at it, the way the funds were managed, you will clearly see that the government decided to use the law enforcement officers on the people rather than giving the people what was needed. I think there was a period where a certain chief said, you cannot come to give us soap and buckets. Now, how do we fight this with just soap and bucket of water? And the worst of it is that even the water itself, to even wash your hands, we have water crisis in Cameroon. So there is a lot of mismanagement when certain things are concerned in the country. And this is because the government or the president gives a lot of period for people to do whatever they want. But we are saying that as the head of a country, you are supposed to ensure that whatever comes in, because if things like this keep happening, then we may actually fall into a problem bigger than the COVID we are seeing today, and we may not have funds to actually handle it. So this is something which so many people are called. And you know, if the IMF did not say, okay, give us accountability, give us a report on how you have spent this money, I want to believe that the president would have said, because immediately the IMF said that, then the president had to push it now, okay, and say, my ministers, tell me how you have spent this money. And we saw that even the Minister of Public Health came out with just a 2-page report. How would you be talking about a 2-page report for close to 40-something billion CFA francs, as he claimed at the time that he had received? So it is a country where so many of the ministers believe whenever a room is created, whenever a fund is actually put in place, it is time for them to mismanage it. Okay. But I think if the IMF would help us this time around to ensure that even before granting loans to Cameroon, they need to tell the Cameroonian people, because beside the IMF, they have a duty, it is a responsibility they owe the Cameroonian people to give them reports on how money is being spent whenever there is a situation.
Mr. Abdouraman, how do we explain that money is disbursed and seemingly it is being siphoned or embezzled, when we know that there are instances that are supposed to be regulating the way monies are managed in the country? Les gens là dormaient?
Monsieur Leonard, oui. Je suis tout au moins amusé quand nous décidons de revenir encore sur ces situations. Je pense que mes co-panélistes ici ont suffisamment élaboré sur cette histoire. Je pense pas que le Cameroun est le seul pays où ce qui n'est plus normal est normal. S'il n'y a pas que la Covid-19, on a parlé tout à l'heure de fonds alloués à la lutte contre le sida. Il y a l'organisation de la CAN, que nous oublions d'ailleurs, que jusqu'à aujourd'hui, nous devons organiser la CAN dans 6 mois. Disons comme ça, dans 6 mois. Et qu'il y a le stade principal, qui est le stade Olembe, qui doit abriter le match d'ouverture et la finale, qui n'est pas encore livré. Donc, le Cameroun, c'est un pays où, à chaque fois qu'il y a une opportunité, ceux qui nous gouvernent trouvent en cela une opportunité de s'enrichir, une opportunité de se mettre plein dans les poches. Il y a quelqu'un un jour qui s'est demandé si nous sommes encore gouvernés. Et puis il y a la place pour se poser ce genre de questions. C'est tout au moins laborieux. Aujourd'hui, on a l'impression que cette histoire de Covid est plutôt, au lieu de chercher de la vérité, c'est plutôt une histoire de compte rendu entre les ministres. Parce que comment comprendre qu'il y a tout un ministère de la santé et qu'à la présidence, on vous met encore sur pied ce qu'on appelle une task force. C'est pourquoi il y a eu une rupture de confiance entre eux, nous ne comprenons pas. Il y a une justice au Cameroun. Il y a toute une panoplie d'institutions qui peuvent mettre la lumière sur cette histoire. Mais curieusement, on tourne autour d'une histoire où on ne comprend pas. On ne sait exactement pas combien a été alloué, combien comme fonds a été alloué pour lutter contre la COVID-19 au Cameroun. Effectivement, mon compte panéliste nous le disait à sa prise de parole, hormis les fonds alloués par la FMI, nous avons des hommes d'affaires qui ont contribué. Nous avons écouté ici où tel donnait des centaines de millions, tel a donné 200 millions. Au total, ça fait combien? Qu'est-ce qu'on a fait de cet argent? Alors nous avons que vu dans nos petits écrans où on se retrouvait dans des villages à remettre des seaux et des savons aux gens en leur disant qu'il faut lutter contre la Covid. Heureusement, mon confrère l'a dit encore, comment pourrons-nous lutter contre la Covid avec du seau et du savon si le savon était prévu pour laver les mains, pour laver les mains également, il faut de l'eau. Est-ce que nous avons même de l'eau au Cameroun? Il faut se poser la question. Donc, du coup, le problème du Cameroun est très profond, est plus profond que ce que nous pensons. Et que nous, je vais le dire ainsi, au PCN, nous pensons qu'il y a une rupture de confiance entre les populations et ceux qui nous gouvernent aujourd'hui. Donc, ils doivent comprendre qu'ils sont arrivés à bout. J'aime souvent dire que quand vous transportez quelque chose de lourd et qu'à un moment cette chose tombe, vous êtes seul, vous n'arrivez même plus à soulever, il faut parfois laisser quelqu'un d'autre venir essayer de soulever, parce que le Cameroun aujourd'hui a atteint un niveau où ceux qui nous gouvernent ne peuvent plus rien pour ce pays. Il y a une rupture de confiance. Aujourd'hui, quel ministre peut se mettre et dire quelque chose à une population et il accepte? Personne. Nous n'avons plus confiance à ceux qui nous gouvernent parce qu'ils nous ont tellement menti. On a parlé du fonds alloué au Covid, nous avons parlé du fonds alloué au SIDA. Maintenant, on peut revenir même à nos infrastructures, les routes. On vous dit, on a goudronné 1 kilomètre de route à 8 milliards. De quels milliards? On parle des milliards de francs CFA. C'est de l'argent que nous cherchons là, que ces gens s'amusent à prononcer comme s'ils partaient de 1000 francs, ils parlaient de 1000 francs, 5000, 1 kilomètre de route. Et que quelques temps plus tard, les mêmes routes qu'ils ont utilisées des centaines de millions pour goudronner, vous passez par là et vous trouvez qu'ils sont déjà troués partout. Donc, Monsieur Leonard, c'est tout au moins intéressant que nous continuons à parler, mais je pense que ces gens sont arrivés, c'est que à un point que j'aime souvent appeler un point de non-retour. Donc, ils s'en foutent de tout, ils s'en foutent des Camerounais, de votre ressenti, et puis ils savent qu'on va rien faire, et puis ils font ce qu'ils font, ils veulent faire.
Yeah, we have a ministry of public health that is supposed to be managing all health policy issues in the nation. We have a Ministry of Finance. We have other supervisory ministry, like the Ministry of Supreme State Audit, that is supposed to monitor, check what is happening. But curiously, these COVID-19 issues were placed under the Prime Ministry and now taken to the presidency. Was it not also because they wanted to ensure that everything works out well?
Mr. Leo, you see, tell me who a minister is in Cameroon, and I will tell you who his subordinates are. So, contrary to what some people think, that the government in place has never succeeded in anything, I was surprised with this evening that there is one aspect in this country that the government in place have fully succeeded. They can fail to give us roads. They can fail to give us potable water. They can fail to build us schools. They can fail to give us hospitals. But they cannot fail to embezzle. So in the domain of embezzlement, this government in place has succeeded 100%. that one, it is undebatable. If not, we have a government that it seems like even at the burial of someone, they take it as commerce to make profit. If not, how do you explain the fact that in the midst of a pandemic that has threatened all world countries, all the powerful nations in the world, people solicit aid to help their population, and in my dear fatherland, their own is going into private pockets. My co-panelist spoke a while ago about the HIV funds that were swindled. I want to go a bit further. You see, till date, if we were to do auditing in this country, it means that before this program runs to an end today, ministers seated in Yaoundé will not need to pay flights before running out of Cameroon. We have the history of computers that were to be given to universities. Till date, we don't have a clear account on how the money for these computers was used. We have the plan, humanitarian plan, that was to be executed to the people of Northwest and Southwest under stress, under duress, that till date the Minister of Territorial Administration has never given an account of how this money was used. We have Bamenda Babaju, that is a nightmare, that the budget was voted in 2015, and I want to remind our viewers that each year this route gets a new budget, but the original stand budget for this route since 2015 has never been accounted as to why the road is still uncompleted today. We can go on and on and on. They talked about different stadiums in the country. Just go to Omnisport here. Do you know that the CHAN that just went by, that on the eve of the CHAN, laborers were paid to use dig axes and wheelbarrows to work on Omnisport Stadium here, and nobody is being worried about it. Who bewitched Cameroon? Sometimes I really sit at a quiet corner and ask myself, is it that God has forgotten that a nation exists as Cameroon? Because the way they are acting, no one has a conscience any longer. They see corpses of COVID everywhere. Now we need water. There is no water. You are in Douala, you can testify. And people have been comfortably seated on this money that was designed to help people during a pandemic. And the worst part of it, Mr. Leo, is that if you see the way these people spend this money, you have every reason to define them as state terrorists in this country.
No,
you see, I met a situation at wrong point where
you spend time with them.
Listen, we are living with them. They are not far from us.
Okay.
I saw a situation at wrong point where a Form 3 child was driving a car that even the policemen were afraid to control this child. When they were speaking to him, he was just looking at them like this and smiling. At one point, one policeman whispered that, let's party. Let's separate and find a problem. You see, these people, one, if this money was stolen and been invested even in their villages or in Cameroon, it would have been better. How do we define witchcraft again in this country?
Okay.
When money is stolen and the leaders locked in one particular room or sent out of the country, that's capital flight, that has no economic impact back in our country.
Okay. Atia Tilarious, he raised the issue of accountability. Hardly have we seen monies that are disbursed for specific purposes accounted for. Yeah, it's true that they agreed at the National Assembly, but wouldn't it also be interesting that either quarterly or annually, some ministers also explain to the Cameroonians that I received so amount, and this is what we are doing.
Leo, and that's the problem I see we have in Cameroon. Nobody is accountable to anybody. They are above. The government is above the social contract. They don't feel that they owe Cameroonians anything. It's even worse with ministers because they don't have a mandate from the people. What they enjoy is delegated mandate that was given to the head of state. And because the head of state constitutionally has the right to appoint to civil and military positions, he appoints them, and most often among his friends and those he knows. Because I'm not sure they can appoint Atia. The head of state does not know me, so he will not appoint me. So they appoint their friends and those who are close, and they come on board. And since they feel that it's a favor or that President Biya knows them, they manage the country with impunity. You can imagine that I'm not sure any parliamentarian has been able to see the account of any ministry, how they spent money, even for this COVID. Because the only thing when ministers go to parliament, they'll ask you a question. How is OCHA functioning? He will say this and say that, and that's the end. Cameroonians have never been privy to know how the finances of the country are managed. If the Cameroon government was not requesting extra money from the IMF, this audit would not have been done at this time. I'm not sure. And Leo, Cameroon had received 258 million in May 2020. And in October, Cameroon applied for more money, that they needed 285 million US dollars because families were suffering, the economy was down, they need to support the economy. And the IMF gave Cameroon 158 million US dollars from the 825 they applied for. And now Cameroon went back that the 669 million US dollars that is left, they needed more money from the IMF. And the IMF said, no, let's have a report of how the previous two were spent. And government was babbling. And before that, there was a report by the Transparency International and Human Rights Watch where they had to investigate how this money was managed. And it showed that the government departments were not collaborative enough. Nobody wanted to give information as to how their respective ministries managed the funds. You remember let me just divert a little, when the vaccine issue came up, we had jokes on social media where people were saying that they cannot take vaccines without eating. That the rice, the OCHA rice, the famous OCHA rice, should be shared so that the population, they should see the population receiving the rice and so they can eat and be able to take vaccines, because people don't normally take medicines when they are hungry. And till date, we were told that this rice or whatever was shared to regional governors to be given to the population. To this day, I don't know if somebody saw regional governors going house to house sharing the rice or even giving it to anybody in the regions. If they saw it, then fine, but I've not seen. So it means there's no accountability. So when the Transparency International and Human Rights Watch pointed the torch on the COVID situation in Cameroon, they saw that medical doctors were complaining that even thermometers were in short supply. The face mask and the protective glasses that medical personnel are supposed to use to fight COVID were absent. The treatment centers and the testing centers were ill-equipped. There were moments where people said reagents and other things were in short supply. Government quickly came to say, oh, that was not the situation. And we remember that a certain director of a hemodialysis center in Bamenda had claimed that machines were working and everything was, the regional delegate, when the director said things were broken down, the regional delegate came out to say no, everything was okay, the center was functional, and that the minister even said equipment were going to be sent overnight and they will be there the next day. But it took about a week or more for those machines to be put there. So when the Transparency International and the Human Rights Watch said there were no masks, there were no thermometers in the treatment centers, there were no disinfectants, and medicine to be used in the treatment and testing centers, the ministers came out to say no, the reports were false and all of that. And this is what has influenced the audit. Because how come 180 billion was given out to government departments and even their regional structures, external services in the region? Because some governors will also be auditioned there, because people see it as something limited to Yaoundé. No, we have some governors that received funding to fight against COVID, and they will also be auditioned. And we remember that treatment centers were constructed in some stadia in the country, and these stadia were supposed to host the chant. And even before the construction was over, the Minister of Sports and Physical Education was asking that, no, we want to use these sports facilities for the CHAN. And these things that were constructed with millions of francs CFA from apparently the IMF loan were destroyed overnight because they had to be used to play football. So is this not mismanagement? Was it not a foolhardy venture to go when Cameroon had been awarded the rights to host a competition and everybody knew the date of the hosting? You go and construct some other facilities on those stadiums when there are so many hospitals in the regions that are begging for renovation, for equipment that could have been equipped, renovated, and used. Like I even said that the money that was spent to quarantine people in 5-star hotels was unnecessary. That they would have taken the money and quarantine these people in dormitory schools. You negotiate with mission schools that had dormitories, because at the time schools had been shut down, and government should have used these dormitories to quarantine those who were coming into the country at the time to observe them of COVID-19. But because as it is chop a chop in the country, those who have friends who own 5-star hotels and all of that, they negotiated, and apparently you lodge these people there under quarantine measures, and when the money comes, they share the booty. It is very possible, because I don't see the rationale why we can have other facilities to quarantine people. They prefer to use 5-star hotels, and all of us know how expensive these things are. So it was seen as a chopping arrangement, and nobody knew that the audit was going to come this fast.
The creation of the task force to manage activities, COVID-19 activities, that was taken from the Prime Ministry to the Presidency, was it also because of the identification of the leakages along the expenditure line for COVID-19?
Yeah. Now, the Presidency believes that the Prime Ministry could not actually give them the proper report on the spendings. You remember when the Minister Malachi said he has received just about 41 billion out of the total amount, and it was only obvious that he is answering to the Prime Minister, but the Prime Minister is not actually the person in charge. Now, when it comes to this money...
What do you mean by the Prime Minister is not the person in charge?
Now, the Prime Minister is not actually the person in charge. We could see it from the decision taken by Ferdinand Gongo, who says this is actually... Now, according to what the decree or what he says, Ferdinand Gongo says he is actually writing on behalf of the head of state to withdraw this money from the Prime Ministry to the Presidency. Now, the big question is, the Presidency has every department like we have it in different ministries. They have representatives, no doubt. But I think the proper person to manage this money would have been the Prime Minister. The issue here is, because of the conflicting reports, you know, one major problem we have in Cameroon is that there are some ministers who believe that you cannot control me as such. Since you were not the person who solicited for my appointment, it is obvious that the person who did, I should actually pay allegiance to that person. And I want to believe that this is the reason why we keep having different reports from the different ministries. Now, if you look at the way the Presidency words this decision, that's the way they decided to put it with regards to withdrawing this money from the Prime Ministry. Even at the Presidency, they have not succeeded to give the names of the beneficiaries, therefore the companies which are in charge of supplying certain equipment to Cameroon to fight COVID-19. Up till date, they have not told the IMF which companies are involved. So why are they obscuring that particular information? It is only obvious that there is still something hiding. Somebody is actually hiding something somewhere. But we are saying that they should not bring in what is going to mar, or because according to the projections which I'm actually getting from the WHO, Africa has not yet seen the wave with what is happening in India. They are saying that there will be a time in Africa where COVID will be something else than what we are seeing today. And so we are saying that if they are already mismanaging the already giving 208 billion or so to Cameroon to actually fight COVID, it will be difficult if the surge of COVID comes back to Africa, because they believe that all what was being said, the black skin in quote, would not actually suffer from this. But we have seen the way others have died in different countries. Top officials are dying out of COVID. So the withdrawing of this money from the Prime Ministry to the Presidency, It is because the information, I think it's because the information which the Prime Ministry would have given to perhaps if an independent body came to them, because according to IMF and according to Transparency International, they would want to have a report that will be an independent body. It will not be the one which is set up by the government. But I think the Supreme State Audit, which is actually involved, the IMF up to date is not convinced of their report. So, you know, if you met the Prime Minister, for example, to ask him, because he was the person who received the consignment of all what was sent to Cameroon, including what Jack Ma gave to Cameroon. And so even when the first vaccines came out, we saw the Prime Minister receiving these things. It therefore means that he is actually the competent person to handle it. But come to think of it, if not of the fact that the health minister could not actually defend to the Cameroonian people. We heard of cases where masks, which we all know they are sold in the quarters, even here in Douala for 200 and 150 francs CFA. We are told that they bought it for 1,000 CFA francs. Now, when you put things like this to Cameroonians, you tell that person, because even the cost of these masks, that is not actually the cost. The cost of these masks is not up to $2 in the US. And so why would it be more than $2 in Cameroon? So this is already telling that the Prime Minister, perhaps at this point, is also confused and will not want to give a conflicted information. That's why the presidency decided to withdraw the funds put aside to fight COVID.
Yeah, we are getting information. I don't know whether it's too correct, but we hear that I'm sure 6 ministers were auditioned today, 15 to do so tomorrow. What was the pertinence in handing these monies to almost all these ministries to do what? When we have a Ministry of Public Health with a national policy and that was expected to be supervised from the Prime Ministry. Why dish out 7 billion to this ministry, 4 billion? Even the Ministry of Finance received money. What for?
Monsieur Leonard, l'objectif de ces gens, c'est pas de travailler pour les Camerounais. Les gens ont un gâteau, ils doivent se partager. Quand vous dites que c'est quoi l'objectif de... Il est bien évident qu'il y a un ministère de la santé. S'il y a un problème de santé, qu'il s'en charge. Ceux qui se retrouvent au ministère de la Justice, ce sont des Camerounais. S'ils doivent être protégés, il y a un ministère de la Santé. Donc, c'est le jeu, le dépipé derrière la base, ça veut dire que dès qu'on a mis les fonds et qu'il faille redistribuer les fonds à chaque département ministériel, on comprend là qu'on veut tout simplement que chacun... Voilà, c'est ça donc le problème. C'est bien beau qu'on auditionne ces ministres, mais je vous assure que si le travail veut être bien fait, que c'est lui-même qui a engagé ces auditions, ne soit pas surpris qu'il va même arrêter sa grand-mère avec qui il vit à la maison. Parce que c'est une chaîne. Et tous, sans exception, sont dans cette histoire. Tous sont goûtés. Mais c'est même pas ça le plus grave, Monsieur Leonard. Le plus grave, c'est que on peut encore les tolérer, tous ces amalgames qu'ils font. Pour ceux qui sont présents dans les réseaux sociaux, est-ce que vous savez qu'aujourd'hui, il y a eu grève? Grève par qui? Le personnel du laboratoire national. Le personnel du laboratoire national en charge de contrôle des médicaments et d'expertise ont grévé. Pourquoi ils grèvent? Ça fait 4 mois qu'ils ne sont pas payés. Donc ceux qui sont chargés de contrôler les médicaments que les Camerounais prennent, ils ne les ont pas payés, ça fait 4 mois. Et ce n'est pas la première fois. À chaque fois ils grèvent, pour qu'on les paye, il faille qu'ils grèvent. Vous pensez que c'est comme ça qu'on va gouverner un État? C'est comme ça qu'on va progresser? Pour qu'on donne ton argent, il faut que tu te fâches. Ça, c'est même pas le plus pire. Ils vous font comprendre, parce qu'il faudrait qu'on nous... Je le dis ici aujourd'hui, immédiatement, dès qu'ils ont commencé la grève, l'honorable Cabral Libi s'est retrouvé avec eux pour les écouter. Mais ils vous font comprendre que ça fait 5 ans qu'ils ne contrôlent rien comme médicament qui entre au Cameroun. J'ai dit ça fait 5 ans. Donc les médicaments que nous prenons n'ont subi aucun contrôle de ce laboratoire. Pourtant, ils ont un laboratoire bien équipé. Ils disent, ce laboratoire d'expertise, ils vous disent qu'ils ne contrôlent plus rien. Voilà pourquoi on s'en fout même d'eux. On a même l'impression qu'on leur donne juste l'argent pour rien. Voilà pourquoi parfois on décide de ne pas leur donner. Cette institution n'a pas de conseil d'administration, n'a pas de président de conseil d'administration. Tu comprends cette ambiguïté juridico-administrative. Donc quand ils veulent contourner pour bouffer de l'argent, ils ont des mécanismes par lesquels ils vont échapper. Donc ce n'est plus quelque chose qui va nous surprendre, nous les Camerounais. Donc, ces gens ont atteint un point de non-retour. Nous leur demandons tout simplement, très sagement, qu'ils comprennent qu'ils ont amené le Cameroun au bout du tunnel et qu'il est temps que nous, Camerounais, nous nous relevons et qu'on ne peut plus le faire avec eux. À un moment donné,
après le but du tunnel, il y a la lumière, non?
Non, oui. La lumière, donc, ce n'est plus eux qui peuvent nous apporter la lumière. La lumière, c'est autre personne. Qu'ils nous permettent donc de découvrir la lumière après le bout du tunnel, qui sera fait avec des autres.
La lumière vient d'où? It can be light from a train. You can be coming out of the tunnel and the train is coming to your direction. So it will cross you. So you may be seeing the light, but it's a light that will cross you.
But what is important in this matter is that it's not those who are governing us now that can change the situation of Cameroon. They should know about that.
Okay. Tabot Machiavelli watching from Yaoundé says, greetings to the panelists and lovers of Prime R. The reason corruption still goes unchecked in this country is just because there is no separation of power, and more so the law exempts some class of people who matter in society. Good evening to you, Tabot. Okay. This one says, I just want out which law will the government use to prosecute these ministers? Who is investigating them? I suggest that reputable lawyers be brought in to ask questions to these ministers in question. My worry is that Cameroonians are involved. IMF should send a team for his findings. My opinion. Okay, good evening to you, my brother Gobina Simon, watching us from Boya. It's a long time. Happy to read from you, but he's raising a point that who are those to judge these ministers? And before now, Tabot also talked about the issue of the separation of power. If those that are supposed to sanction these ministers are receiving orders from another arm of the government, how transparent will this be?
I think I must be honest enough to appreciate that point raised by our able televiewers. You see, it's a problem, like he said, it's a chain. Those who are claiming that they are there to govern us, I am not sure that some of these ministers, if you ask them this evening what is in their plan of action to do in the office tomorrow, they will tell you. To be very sincere with you, I am one of the Cameroonians who believe that most of these ministers are there at the disservice of Cameroonians and not at the service of Cameroonians, because there's a lot of administrative cacophony in this country. Nobody knows who controls whom. For example, you were talking, you asked a very pertinent question a while ago about why the decision for the account to come from the Prime Minister office later shifted back to the presidency. And it is very simple, because in actual fact we have only one arm of government. People should not be fooled to say that we have three arms of government. No, we have one arm of government in Cameroon, which is the executive. Embezzlement begins from the executive. Investigation begins from the executive, and the execution ends back at the executive. And that is why we see absolutely zero result, because there's a common proverb: you cannot set a thief to catch a thief. Those who are there claiming that they want to investigate others, there are skeletons in their cupboards, Mr. Leo. There is no way for them to come out clear, and you'll discover that, like the francophones will say, ils sont à la tête chercheuse. At the end of this investigation, they will see who was disturbing and was not really obeying their party discipline well, and that person will go down for it. It will not only be an affair of COVID, it will be score settling. So to speak, nothing concretely is being done. And if not of the IMF pressure, I bet you in 30 years, this audit will never take place. So, to sum it all, nobody actually knows what he is supposed to do. And I think it is time for these people to use wisdom and wit to believe that when a bag becomes so heavy on your head, you look for somebody that can help you and then you put it down, you go in peace. These people are not at our service, they are at our disservice. No minister. Before I give back the microphone to you, there was a time I said here that if you want to know whether these ministers are keeping Cameroon and Cameroonians first, or they are keeping themselves and the egocentricity first, just ask some of these Cameroonians to state the national emblems of Cameroon. Start with the national anthem. I am telling you for sure, 60% of them cannot sing the national anthem of Cameroon. Because if 60% of them were abreast and could sing the national anthem of Cameroon, Mr. Leo, take the lyrics, study it and what it is really saying, all this embezzlement would not have been a tradition to them. You see, all of them almost have, they have failed in every domain, but all of them have PhDs in embezzlement. And so I think we cannot continue like that. So Cameroonians are wallowing, they are wailing in their penury, while few individuals are taking the country hostage in the name of minister.
Somebody asked which law is going to be used to punish them. We have the penal code that was revised in 2016 that is going to punish them, and they have not been taken to the ordinary courts, because we are talking about whooping sums of money in billions, because above 5 million it is a superior court, like the special criminal court, and that is why it's a special criminal court. And just to say that the audit bench of the Supreme Court carried out the audit of these funds, and their report was sent to the President of the Republic in March 2021. And after that, the President of the Republic ordered the Minister of Justice to carry out a judicial inquiry. And now it is the investigative service at the Special Criminal Court that is listening to the ministers. After the audit report, they now listen to them. These figures here, what happened? They will explain. And those who are found to have involved themselves in things that are not regular, they will stand trial before the courts, and they will have to defend themselves. It's not, we expect that it's not going to be a kangaroo process, that they will have the chance to a fair hearing, to bring the receipts, to bring proof that the money they were given, they actually spent it for the service of Cameroonians. You asked the question why the funds were transferred from the Prime Minister's office to the Presidency of the Republic. And the answer is clear. Cameroon runs a dual governance system where there is a government at the presidency, there's another government outside. The government outside is managed by Anglo, the Prime Minister, who is oftentimes not respected as he should be. We have ministers in this country who don't attend cabinet meetings, who send their junior ministers at their ministries to go and attend cabinet meetings. We have ministers in this country who don't go to parliament to answer questions, who don't go to parliament to be grilled by parliamentarians, for parliamentary inquiries to be carried out on how they manage their ministries. There are many of them, and they feel that they are superior, they are above the Prime Minister. And unfortunately for the Prime Minister, he was a junior minister for a very long time. He was minister delegate at the Ministry of External Relations for a very long time. And some of these ministers today who feel that they are untouchables were ministers when he was a junior minister. So today he emerged, we can say, from nowhere and became Prime Minister, head of government. And some of these people think that they cannot respect him. When I read a report of Jeune Afrique, which says that since he was appointed, there are some ministers who have not attended cabinet meetings because they feel that they cannot be attending a meeting chaired by someone who is a junior. Junior in the sense that they think that the person is an Anglophone, and if not of the fact that there's regional balance and they've given the Prime Minister's office to Anglophones, the person will not be Prime Minister. That is the impression they have. And because we have a government where the Prime Minister, for example, or the ministers will increase the price of fuel by 10 francs, and the people will go to the streets and start protesting, and the head of state will come like the Messiah and say, no, I've reduced 5 francs from fuel, I've done this and that. That is the impression, because they make things not to work for the government. If ministers don't attend cabinet meetings, there's an interministerial committee to fight COVID. We are asking why they gave money to ministers. It was only logical that the situation was dire. Cameroon could not manage the situation. It was changed to everybody. So there was need for efforts to be put together to fight. Schools were shut down, and when schools are shut down, children cannot sit at home idling. They say an idle mind is a devil's workshop. So the Minister of Secondary Education, for example, was supposed to receive part of the funds to see how they can do online learning and all of that. How they could, some countries bought tablets, laptops, and shared to secondary school children, so they could be at home and they can have internet and they continue studying while the pandemic is being handled. That's what happened in some countries. It did not happen in Cameroon. So I feel that two things could have happened. That one, the Prime Minister could not have a mastery of the Interministerial Commission. The ministers who were there could not give him reports. He could not ensure that they are audited, because we have ministries in Cameroon that are not under government per se, like the Ministry of Defense is attached to the presidency. It is the president, the head of state, who is Minister of Defense, actually. Because what we have as member of government is a minister delegate. It's the same thing with the Supreme State Audit. What we have is a minister delegate. So it is difficult to have a minister delegate order an investigation when the head of state has not given an approval. So the Prime Minister's hands are tied at some point, because he cannot, although the money has been given to government for management, he cannot order an audit. And I feel that is part of the marginalization of Anglophones that we are talking about, that Anglophones are being marginalized. Because what is in managing COVID funds, that it will be taken from the Prime Minister's office to the Presidency of the Republic? Is it that we have expert managers at the Presidency of the Republic? And if yes, why is it that we have not had these expert managers at the Presidency deliver the much needed development that we want? The ring road, we have not had it since 1983, and President Biya promised to personally supervise. He has not supervised and given us that road. We have the Babaju, the Bafusan Babaju Road and Bamenda Babaju Road, that is part of the reconstruction plan for the Northwest and Southwest regions. It is still there. Nobody is doing anything. We have so many other things. Even the Olembe Stadium, that is a jewel, and I think that is a pet project for President Biya. It is still there. We still have floods in Yaoundé every day. And that's why when they talk about decentralization and the devolving competencies to the regions, I feel that even Yaoundé does not have competencies. The other issue that can be sticky is about the money. Because if Yaoundé had the competencies, we will not have flood in Yaoundé. Okay. In the city of Yaoundé, we will not have flood.
Evening, Mr. Liu and your crew on board Samba, writing from Tombel. Ministers are above the Prime Minister in these triangular nations of ours. Our Prime Minister is a figurehead. Good evening to you, Samba, writing there from Tombel. Good evening to you. A techie, Madame Techie, Stella, greetings to you and the Mr. President of Africa-Letism for the Southwest region. Good evening, Mr. Liu. We are happy with the program. Thank you very much, Mr. Liu. Good evening to all the panelists. I have a question. Who are the auditors and what's the sanctions? I think we should look at the sanctions, just to take note of that. The auditing should be live on all the TV stations so that they should answer the questions directly. Okay. Herbert, writing from Bamenda, said yesterday it was this and that. Today it is embezzlement of COVID money. Tomorrow it will be this and that. The embezzlement continues. There will be no change with the present regime. Herbert, writing from Bamenda. Good evening, Mr. Kum, and special greetings to my friend, Mr. Ndiwum. I can fervently and vehemently say that the youth are responsible for the problems. Okay, you're already answering our second topic for tonight. Good evening to you, Mr. Liu. I love your program. I wish Mr. Acho Julius was in the studio to defend the ministers. It's Elvis Brown, writing from Shell, New Bell. Okay, unfortunately, it's not there. Good evening, Mr. Liu, and to all of you in the studio following the program. Daisy is writing from Kumba. Good evening to you, Daisy. Mr. Liu and members of the panel, please, I wish to know if the said money was given as a dash or loan. Ma Bisong is writing from Kumba. Good evening, Mr. Liu. I can't express how much joy is in me because of this program. Prime, keep on the good job. Only God will see you through. I'm happy you didn't invite some people in the program this evening. Okay. I'm Godlove, writing from Big Panda. Good evening to you, Godlove. Good evening, Mr. Leo and members of the panel. Thank you for this program on My Media Prime. COVID-19 has made all the ministers in Cameroon as fast become finance ministers, as they have put all their eyes on COVID monies. As I'm talking to you, my boss is behind bars. Secondly, Mr. Leo, can you also invite the health sector on your panel as well? Thanks. Jean is writing from Yaoundé. Wow, Jean says the boss is behind bars. Yes, I'm sure many more persons may join him if they cannot account for the money. Good evening to all the panelists. If the government can't protect its citizens from COVID-19 pandemic, how you want same citizens to believe that COVID-19 is real? Valerie is writing from mile 16. Now, yes, auditionings are going on, but if at all these persons, ministers, are found guilty, should they just be sent to Kondengiro? They are sacked. Should they even be auditioning them in office?
Well, please permit me to come to that question. I just have some things to say which I took note of. Actually, you had asked the question also concerning why the money was given to other ministries. I think Mr. Atia Tilarious.
Yeah, so many ministries.
Yes, Mr. Atia Tilarious said a lot on that. I just want to add by saying that IMF did not conceive this idea to give this money, or Cameroon did not apply just to fight COVID. Cameroon applied for money to actually see how to manage the economy also of the country. And we have several sectors which within the nation which were actually affected a lot at the beginning of this pandemic, especially when it had to hit hard on the economy. That's why other ministries were brought in to manage that. One major problem, and the Prime Minister of Cameroon, except the constitution would change, would always face is the fact that most of the ministers who are appointed, they are appointed by those who give them or who submit their names at the presidency for their appointment. As such, it is obvious that some would always say to themselves, and even to his face at one point in time, because we saw a case where the Prime Minister was on the ground struggling to look at other issues with regards to the ongoing crisis, and one other minister was somewhere doing whatsoever he thought he could do, because at the back of his mind, some other persons whom he calls his godfather fought for him to be there, or maybe he has his own way of handling things when this is concerned, because they will always say it, I was appointed by the president, you were appointed by the president, so you did not actually tell the president to appoint me. As such, you have no right over me. Now, when it comes to how these guys will be handled, it is obvious that the state of Cameroon for now will take these guys and keep in Kondengui, which in most cases, what we need is the money. Now, what Cameroon is actually doing is not even giving the report with regards to the funds which IMF gave to Cameroon, the loan. Cameroon is still auditing the ministers involved, which they have not even written the report yet, because IMF is asking for you to justify how you use the money, and you are there auditing your ministers to tell them, or to tell the government, or to tell the head of state, because since everything has been centered or is actually coming from the presidency, it is obvious that the head of state is the only person whom the report will be given to. And when that happens, he has his own way of doing things. The next thing you hear is that these ministers were sent to Kondengui. But we do not want to keep seeing people going to Kondengui. What we want is the funds, because these are loans which the government goes for, and the burden comes back to the people. We bear the burden of this loan. And until the government will understand that this is not money which is given to Cameroon as dash, as we commonly put it. This is actually a loan we go in for. Take the case of the PB. It came in, the branded it President Biya Higher Education Vision, which was not even something that was supposed to be done, because this was actually a loan which Cameroon got from the Exim Bank of China. So Cameroonians should not be fooled whenever money is concerned. It is not a gift per se. This is actually our money. You have the taxpayers' money, you have the money that will always come from the natural resources of the country, and so on. So if these ministers are merely sent to Kondengui without us recovering this fund, then I will personally say that IMF should first of all sit and rethink of what to do whenever Cameroon comes for a loan, because it has been proven that whenever money is involved in this country, accountability is not actually given. Like I said it from the start, the ministers are behaving and acting the way they are because their head had one set. Where is the proof of the embezzlement you are talking about? So especially those who are involved, those who have a fine relationship with him, they believe that they are going to be protected. And I think this is time for Cameroonians, the people, to come out and call on the government to give us a report on how this money was spent even before giving to IMF, because we are the ones that will bear the burden to repay this loan to IMF, not just some of these ministers who have already embezzled. Like my co-panelist said, there is high capital flight. Today, if you look at what is happening today, and this is where I also go to blame some of these multinationals, because they behave as though they do not know what is happening within the same country, but they will keep giving money, because those whose interests are protected within the multinationals, especially the IMF and the World Bank, they believe that once they give their money, they always, because this is an institution which is out to make profit. It is not actually out to help per se. What we give in return whenever money is given to us, this is where most of these persons involved in managing the finance, especially the capitalist world, this is where they go to make their money. And so I want to believe that it is a scheme which, if Cameroonians do not sit up, then we will keep seeing this, because if we have to go back to look at the money of aid, up to date, Cameroonians are not clear on how much money the government actually received and how much money was actually spent to fight HIV/AIDS. And we are having the same case today with COVID-19. So personally, I think if the government would take out time, the ministers involved, if they find any minister guilty, the Cameroonian people, it is time for us to know why this money was spent. I said it before that a mask was said to have been bought for 1,000 CFA francs. So we are looking at billions of CFA here, and this comes in also to hinder and to hold back development, because so there'll be a time when we may go in when we are actually in need, and we may not have it because of mismanagement.
Good evening, Mr. Liu. Ephraim writing from Bamenda. My regards to the entire panel. Cameroonians are not interested in the number of embezzlers behind bars. We need to hear that these monies are gotten back and put back into the treasury. You people act as if you are not in this country. The fact that the COVID-19 money was shared to all ministers is due to the fact that country is ruled based on party leanings, and when there are funds like that of COVID-19, it is vital to share it to all the wings so that they all have a share and strengthen the party. Imagine that those who fix laws are still the ones concerned in the management of the laws. Tell me one of the ministers that had been arrested for embezzlement. Okay. Good evening to you. Good evening to you all. Thanks for the eye-opening program, which makes us to be informed about the current things happening in this country. It's Kum Bertrand writing from Boya. Vous êtes vraiment sûr que les sanctions vont tomber? Et je vais aussi vous demander pourquoi est-ce qu'on a donné l'argent à plus de 10 ministères pour le Covid?
Monsieur Leonard, parlons des sanctions. Ce ne sont pas des sanctions qui manquent. Maintenant, autre question, est-ce que les sanctions vont tomber? Comme quelles? Ce n'est pas la première fois qu'on lance des auditions, des audits dans ce pays, des contrôles, des enquêtes dans ce pays. Ça aboutit à quoi? Oui, bien évidemment, c'est pour ça que j'ai apprécié le confrère qui a parlé d'une audition à tête chercheuse. Ce ne sont pas des comptes rendus, j'ai d'ailleurs parlé de ça en début d'émission. Est-ce qu'il n'y a pas de personnes spécifiques qu'on recherche dans cette histoire? Parce que si on veut parler de détournement, effectivement, vous-même vous le dites, plus de 10 ministères en ont reçu de l'argent. Pourquoi faire? Bien évidemment, dans le fond, il fallait lutter contre une pandémie qui nous a surpris. Vu la dangerosité de cette pandémie, il était question de mettre sur pied un certain nombre de fonds, un certain nombre de pratiques, notamment du côté éducatif. Il fallait repenser la manière dont les enfants devaient étudier, il fallait repenser un certain nombre de choses, la manière dont les gens devaient travailler. Voilà pourquoi on a peut-être pensé mettre les fonds à la disposition de certains départements ministériels. Mais est-ce que ces fonds ont été utilisés pour des raisons pour lesquelles ils ont été alloués? C'est la question dont nous nous posons. C'est dans ces audits dont vont nous dire exactement où sont partis, ou alors où est parti l'argent alloué à la lutte contre la Covid. Maintenant, est-ce que ces auditions sont faites de manière objective? Nous allons simplement faire confiance, encore une fois de plus, à la justice camerounaise qui est chargée de mettre une lumière claire sur cette histoire, sachant qu'il y a le monde entier nous regarde, cet argent, ou alors une bonne partie de cet argent, nous a été alloué par la FMI. Nous devons rendre compte, parce que cette culture de rendre compte au Cameroun était particulièrement, ou alors avait particulièrement disparu, où chacun pense que l'argent public, les fonds publics, ils peuvent faire de ça ce qu'ils veulent. Mais aujourd'hui, il y a une organisation internationale qui veut savoir la vérité sur cette histoire. Est-ce que pour une fois, ces gens vont nous surprendre en faisant ce que nous attendons d'eux? Il s'agit de mettre la lumière et dire la vérité aux Camerounais par rapport au fonds alloué au Covid.
Okay. What is important with finance is accountability. Once accountability is lacking, then openings of fraud are inevitable. The debts taken are a future burden of the youth, and if we don't call them to order now, we may end up being used as collateral to pay the future debts of our dying politicians. Mr. Liu, we need the money, not people behind bars. Putting them behind bars without taking the money from them will not help us. Okay, Valerie, Stefan Mwambo, who was supposed to be part of this program, says, good evening to everyone on the panel. Mr. Liu, I see no crime for the PM to be summoned to answer questions with regards to the alleged embezzlement of COVID-19 funds. After all, he was at the head of the Interministerial Committee to fight COVID-19. He has no immunity and he should answer questions. However, with regards to the issue of belittling the PM, I think that it is strictly the fault of the PM. The PM is head of government and should assume his duty and impose himself. If he gives instructions and they are not respected by his fellow ministers, the PM should table a complaint to the president. If the president doesn't react, PM should call a press conference and declare his resignation, presenting facts to the Cameroonian people for his resignation. Belly politics is the reason every prime minister keep complaining that they are not respected. Resign and let's see if change will not come. Good evening, Mr. Kum. I'm Eyabi Cardinal from Guti. The nonchalant attitude of the minister's appearance have caused so many youths to search for greener pasture in different parts of the world. My advice to them is simple. They should sit up, for they are the sole cause of the instability of our country. This one's can't read them. Good evening. If the ministers are guilty, they should go behind bars. Good evening, Mr. Liu. The culture of impunity in all the facets of administration is largely responsible for embezzlement in this country. Kwene is writing from Bomenda. The notion of impunity, how do we punish enough to deter those given the responsibility to manage government resources to do so judiciously? What should be done to deter embezzlement?
Mr. Leo, the first thing is that the first problem of Cameroon is that those who know absolutely nothing are those who are put to manage everything. That's the first problem. And to go about it well, I think we have seen enough people behind the bar and the money that they stole. I even heard that in Konengi there are different departments. I think Tilarious can tell us some more about that. I think I think what should be done should not be the arrest and jailing of these. I call them state thieves because they are dealing with the taxpayers' money, using them wrongly. What the government, even though this government, Mr. Leo, you see me, I'm tongue-tied. I'm finding it difficult to really say what I want to say because almost all of them are the same. I don't see who is pure there. But if we were to deal with the word impunity, as you have said, I would have proposed that when somebody steals money and the person is investigated, let the money be brought back to the state coffers and the person set free. I was browsing through Facebook today when I saw a message circulated about 53 cars owned by Mebengo and how many houses owned only in Cameroon and in France? 1 person. I think if those things are confiscated by the state and the money factored into the state coffers, those schools, those roads, those hospitals that we don't have, we will use this money to build those assets that we need in Cameroon. Because statistics have proven that even most of them who go to jail or to prison, their families remain behind, they live in luxury. They have stolen enough that their great-grandchildren will never suffer. But remember that this money they are stolen, sometimes money that was to be for recreational facilities in the country, income-generating activities, of which Cameroon is indebted to be repaid. And if they are put behind bars with the money not recovered, I don't think we are doing anything. So I am humbly for the fact that catch the thief, recover what he stole, and then set him free. He will be ashamed to face even his people back in the quarter. Okay,
that will be severe enough to deter others from stealing money. Okay, good evening, my man Atia. The ministers have used this money to build houses and buy cars for their girlfriends abroad. Okay, good evening, Mr. Liu. I wonder if a minister will really investigate his colleagues like the Minister of Justice. It's just a waste of time and nothing will happen. K. Ferdinand is writing from Bamenda. Good evening to you, K. Ferdinand. This one says, good evening, Mr. Liu, and the guest in the studio. Thanks you for the wonderful job you are doing. It's rather unfortunate that it has been a long-standing tradition that funds are easily disbursed for certain activities, but not follow-up had been made for accountability. We hope this COVID-19 issue has raised an eyebrow for the necessity to carry out transparent auditing. I am Emmanuelle, writing from Ndiwum in Bafut. Mr. Liu, good evening. I'm surprised that high-ranking officials of opposition parties know that drugs entering Cameroon have not been controlled for more than 5 years. During the campaigns for last presidential elections, the party never raised such an issue. Are they not just supporters of the government? George is writing from Kumba. Good evening to you and the panelists. Truth be told here, if Cameroon can be cut off from France only, then we would have started having solutions to our problems in this country. Jevin, writing from where we don't know. When you write, please let us know where you are writing from. This one says, Lister Montana, writing from Yaoundé, says, good evening, Mr. Liu and the panelists. Nice topic. Some Cameroonians in power are greedy. That is why a group of persons will embezzle money meant for the health of Cameroonians. Daisy from Kumba says, good evening, Mr. Liu, and to all the panelists. Esther, writing from Yaoundé, says, evening, Mr. Liu, and to all the sitter there. Atia Tilarious, I don't know whether you think, like Ndiwum, that what would deter other officials from tampering with national resources is the fact that they should collect what they have stolen and then let them go. What if they had used the money to buy maybe houses for their girlfriends and maybe taking care of their families? How do you get this money if they paid huge sums for their children's school fees out of the country?
Well, I jokingly said some time ago that those who embezzle 5 million and above should be taken, for example, to the Olembe Stadium, and Cameroonians are invited for a public flogging ceremony. Where CRTV and other state media like My Media Prime are going to beam the images live, how those who have embezzled and found guilty by a court are stripped naked in a stadium and beaten, and every Cameroonian can take turns to beat them up. Because it's a crime against humanity to embezzle money of that magnitude, and money meant for people who are sick. Imagine that somebody who is dying and just needs a ventilator to be kept alive, and that person goes to a hospital and the ventilators are supposed to be bought by somebody, a contractor or minister or whoever, and that person does not do their job, and there's the absence of a ventilator and somebody dies. You cannot imagine the number of people who have died, even medical doctors who have died because of COVID, and because they went to hospital. The hospitals they went to were out of capacity. They had to go to other hospitals, and these other hospitals did not have ventilators and other life-supporting equipment. And billions have been embezzled by somebody. Whether they bought houses for their girlfriends or whoever, I think the state has a way of getting them to account. Section 1 of the Penal Code says that all persons shall be subject to the criminal law. Everybody, whether you are Prime Minister or Head of State, whether you are even members of Parliament who have immunity, those immunity can be lifted for you to appear before the competent authorities. So I think that the state has to do more of work than talking, because we have guys who have, it has been established that they embezzled 50 billion, and the state has not been able to recover that amount of money, because we cannot boast of having international partners only when we want to buy guns to fight Boko Haram, we want to buy guns to fight separatists and all of that. We should also boast of our international partners when we are fighting corruption, embezzlement of public funds. I think we are in a world where even 100 francs mobile money transaction that you make with somebody, government can have the possibility to trace and know that on this day Kum Leonard sent Atia 100 francs via mobile money or orange money or whichever. And if the state claims that they cannot track all of this, because we have been seeing figures that somebody has 53 cars, they have 100 houses here and there. If we can have these figures, even if these things are not in their names, it means that the state is working. The state should go beyond to show to Cameroonians that this money is being recovered. And I want to say that for now, nobody has said ministers have embezzled money. Nobody has said they have mismanaged money. I think the courts, for now, they are only suspects, because when you keep groundnuts in the house and it gets missing, the first suspect should be the rats that are around. And when you cross-check the rats and you see that no, their stomachs are empty, then you can free them so they can go to the wild. And in this case, they are suspects. It is normal, a judicial process. When we expect that the laws will be applied like it should be, and because the money is too huge, I think that the maximum sentence should be given to serve as a deterrent, and that the state should recover this money, because I don't understand how somebody can finish that kind of money. I'm not sure you can soak it in a bucket and eat like food. You must spend it, you must buy things, and there can be traceability. You spend through bank accounts. You cannot carry money in a bag from Cameroon to abroad. No, you cannot carry money from Cameroon in a bag out of this country without it being traced. And so if these people don't have the money in their houses, the security can trace and know where this money was kept and bring it, because it's a life-saving money for Cameroonians, and it's a loan. We are going to pay back. Somebody was asking if it's a loan or a dash. It is not a dash from the IMF. What I'm saying is that Cameroon in the past had a very dirty record with the IMF, because we championed the corruption bar in 1998. We were the most corrupt. In 1999, we emerged most corrupt, and till date, Cameroon is still struggling to fight corruption. Even CONAC, we have not seen their role in the fight against corruption in times like this. In times of an emergency, a health emergency in the country, CONAC did not come out. So everybody should play their role, because we keep on saying that, oh, President Biya, this and that, but CONAC, we have somebody who is a priest, I don't know, who is receiving millions every month, and we are not seeing the results. CONAC is not showing the result. Okay. I do not expect that Human Rights Watch or Transparency International should be the ones to be talking about corruption in the management of COVID funds when we have an independent corruption, anti-corruption body that should be fighting corruption. But he waits for foreigners like Human Rights Watch and Transparency International and IMF to condition Cameroon to be sure that we can be accountable. I think that we have passed that level now.
Okay, Mr. Leo, we have to catch the thieves, but put them behind bars and change the currency. This will solve the problem and cause those who with huge embezzlement money to yawn. Tiku Felix and Zip writing there from Boya. This one says, good evening, good job, sirs. Good evening to you too. Good evening, Mr. Leo. To deal with impunity in this country, the parliament should pass a law which ban embezzlers and their family from holding any post of responsibility, banned from even schooling, and the money seized, they should stay in the country and feel the pains. Elvis Lyunga is writing from Boya. Good evening to you, Elvis. This one says, good evening, Mr. Liu. No minister has been cut for embassy and money has been refunded back. They should behind the bars suffer. Okay, writing from Kumba, yeah, message is not too clear. Hilary from Boya says, I strongly believe that COVID-19 hasn't reached Cameroon. That is why the funds were shared between ministers as usual. There is COVID-19 in Cameroon, please. Good evening, Mr. Liu. CONAC should be given the full rights to investigate and prosecute both the private and public sector in the country, and defaulters or embezzlers should be given a life sentence with corporal punishment, like cleaning public buildings and working with Hizakam. Ami C. Roger, writing from the United States of America.
COVID is in Cameroon.
Okay.
The one of Cameroon is even more advanced.
Okay.
Because we have the judicial strand that is
Okay.
already emerging and people are going to go in for it.
Okay. Atia, please, money can be carried out. How did our coins get to China? That is Governor Simon responding to you. Good evening to you, Grand Gobi. Good evening, Mr. Liu. Permit me answer your question. Embezzlers of COVID money should be forced to repay the money and later given life jail. Herbert is writing from Bamenda. Good evening, Mr. Liu. I love your program, and I'm a Yabi Cardenas from Guti. Once a thief, always a thief. The only way we Cameroonians can be free from embezzlement is just to respect equality. In country, what we all know is that top Anglophone officials operate as figureheads. This one says, I used to think that IMF used to give its, not until recently that I discovered that IMF give loans, not gifts. But they say they help countries by giving them loans. Daisy, yes, it's loans. Good evening, Mr. Liu. I think we should start using the word thief instead of embezzlement. Then it would sound serious because nobody likes to be addressed as a thief of public funds. Okay. Daniel is writing from Kumba. I am happy you people told me that it is a loan. So we should be talking of money and the interest. Okay. Good evening, my dear brother Kum. Good evening to you too. We are glad with the program. Good evening. Hello, Mr. Liu. This is Kadiri from Greek Cyprus. Those who steal money meant to save lives, such as constructing good roads and hospitals, are the highest killers in our country. These ministers are rotten right into the inner core, in such that they have no shame to steal money meant to save lives. Okay, we are going to take a short break. When we come back, we discuss on our second topic for tonight.
Mr. Liu,
Okay, yes, before that break, Mr. Abdouraman, you had something to add?
Je voulais rapidement apporter une réponse à l'un de vos téléspectateurs qui nous fait comprendre, surtout par rapport à ce que je dis d'ailleurs, que après avoir l'honorable Kabal Libé, après avoir descendu, en fait, après avoir arrivé sur le terrain aujourd'hui, s'est rendu compte que l'ANACOM, qui est le laboratoire en charge d'expertise des médicaments, n'avait pas contrôlé les médicaments depuis 5 ans et qu'ils nous disent que nous le savons et puis nous ne l'avons pas dit lors des échéances électorales précédentes. Non, je vous ai dit que c'est à la descente aujourd'hui que l'honorable Kabal Libé s'est effectivement rendu compte que cette organisation ne travaille pas, ne fait pas son travail depuis, donc c'est pas quelque chose que nous le savons. Et il a d'ailleurs invité tous les grévistes aujourd'hui à son bureau et puis ils ont tenu une réunion, ils ont travaillé ensemble et qu'il les a promis de porter très haut leurs revendications. Merci.
Okay, we are going to be looking at our second topic for tonight, which has to do with Cameroonian youth. I don't know, I'm going to start with you. Atia Tilarious, No, are you not the one who spoke last?
He's the one.
Yeah, so I'll start with you. Atia.
He's the one.
Okay, I'll start with you, Lucas.
The one that
Yes,
spoke
when you look at the situation of young Cameroonians today, do you think they are where they are because they did not work enough, or that the government that has not worked enough to provide them with the best conditions for their development?
You know, we are all supposed to be part of the development of the country and to our individual selves. But if you were to look again into the report of IMF concerning COVID, they said a lot, including that of the young people in Cameroon. As per that report, it shows that the Cameroonian youth constitute about 65% or so, with I think with about 15 to 35 years being so involved in certain activities. Now, the Cameroon is said to be the giant in the CEMAC zone. It's so sad to see that being the giant, its population and most of its vibrant population, which is the youth in this case, they are really down there. Now, when you look at what is happening with the COVID fund and the rest, it tells the youth not to even believe in what the government says. It is difficult for a child to believe that the father is practicing something else and want him to practice something else. That is to say that if we fail to apply the biblical principles, we talked about training a child and not actually just teaching the child. Because when it comes to training, I've always been saying that training has other things involved in it. It has to do with your character. It has to do with you taking part in the activity. It has to do with your past life and so on, in order for this child to believe that what you are saying, truly it is something for he or she to practice. But though we tend to believe that most of the young people in Cameroon are into what they are into today because of the fact that the government is not doing what the government ought to be doing, I would also say that the youth should not dwell on that to determine their life, because once you have had a failed father, which in most cases we are seeing it in Cameroon, once you have had a failed father already and you have the understandings to start your life or to start rebuilding on the good principles, there is no need for you to hold back and say, because of what my father did or because of what my father did not do, I am where I am today. Truly, most young people in Cameroon, even when it comes to issues of election, which is the worst in the country, because the youth are not even involved in partisan politics in Cameroon, and this is caused by most of the politicians in place and most of the old people in place because of what they are doing. Now, when you sample the opinion of a youth, as I was actually speaking with a young man before I got to Douala, and he said, well, all I can do is just to see what to do in order to have mine. In fact, all I'm thinking of right now is that if I'm given this position, I should take mine, because it has been proven by the ministers in the country that once you are here, you should be there for yourself and not for the country. So the youths, they are where they are today because most of the government officials who are supposed to guide them, they are not actually doing their job. They say something else and they practice something else. So we cannot truly blame the youth for the lifestyle they are having, because the person who is in charge of training he or she is not actually giving he or she the proper training. As such, it will be difficult for you to just get up someday and you say you want to remove this person from this, because it has become part of the being of most Cameroonian youth. And the worst of it today is the issue of every young person who wants to, most of the young people you see today, they want to just get up tomorrow and drive a big car and rent a very big apartment and maybe build a very big house, and they think that it is the duty of the parents who have failed. So some will tell you that they are struggling to recover from the money which was stolen from Africa in some time past, because they think this money was not actually meant for them. So it is really a problem, but the major cause of this problem is the lifestyle of those who are in charge of managing these young people.
Okay. Good job, sir. From Santa, your programs are very educative. I watch only this channel to get good and first-hand information in Cameroon. Just to appreciate you personally. Thank you very much. Yes, you're also encouraging us to do the job better. We are glad. Gaoa Fashion, my friend from Kumba, says, good evening, Mr. Liu, and to all the panelists in the studio. I believe the Prime Minister is the head of government, so why is it that instructions have to come from the Secretary of State at the Presidency? During the national dialogue, it was the PM who chaired the sessions with instructions from the Presidency. Who is auditing who? The state is just trying to create awareness to IMF as if they are serious to recover their money. Same story every day. Agawa, good evening to you. Good evening, Mr. Liu and the panelists. It is really sickening that children have been sent by their schools to go to do their COVID-19 test only to be sent back that they are not testing kits, and people have embezzled the money. Shame to them. From Mr. Peter from Bamenda. Good evening, Mr. Kum. More grace for your good job. The scene writing from Moyuka. Good evening to you. Good evening, Mr. Leo. Money embezzled by these ungrateful ministers should be recovered by assessing their properties, sell, and put it in the state coffers. Hilary Fomenki is writing from Kumba Aga. Evaristus from Bonaberi says, Bonaberi Douala says, they should be put on balançoire. They will speak before you know it. Okay. Good evening, Mr. Liu. This is Hassan from Boya. The truth is that the people governing us have no regard for the people they are just governing us as if we are someone's garden. Okay. Good evening to you. This one says, but please, do you know? Okay. No. Mohammed Suleiman says, good evening. Suleiman, writing from Kumba, says, we need the monies back. Yeah. The young people, we all complain all the time that he says the elderly persons have not taught us the right way to go. But we have young candidates like Cabral Libi, Honorable Cabral Libi, who wanted to be presidents. We have had other young candidates. Why do the youth not rally behind him to also say it is our turn?
Mr. Leonard, before coming to the president of the President Cabral Libi situation,
like other youths, not trust him.
Yeah, I want first of all to let you people know that the problem in Cameroon, the main problem in Cameroon is not the lack of institution or the lack of policies and engage with youth. That's not the main problem in Cameroon. The problem here is the absence of the political willingness of those governing us to really monitor and implement these policies. That's the real problem. So their policies, Cameroon even have one of the strongest policy and laws when talking about youth, because some of these policies are used by some African states as their base policies. But the real problem here, I will repeat it, is the lack of willingness of those political, the regime governing us, let me say it like that, to implement the policies and adopt it. Now, we also know that my co-panelist just said it, even about 70% of the population of Cameroon are youth, and they are the most economically marginalized when it comes to decision taking in our country. So you can even mark it. In recent years, the number of youth people have dramatically increased. The youth from 15 to 35 years have dramatically increased, and even the institutions and policies, some institutions and policies have been put to place so as to, how can I say it, to take care and implement the programs, some programs so as to train these youth. But the real problem, which is questionable, is the effectivity of these programs on the field, if I can say it like that. So you cannot come here today and try to lay the problem of youth to them, because you can say it. There are many of the youth, not many, some percentage, let me say 20% of those youths are even responsible of what is happening, but they cannot globalize these problems to all the youths in our country, knowing the people that are governing us. I make mention of some of these institutions that were put in place by the government to take care of the youth. You can talk about the Cameroon National Council, the Cameroon National Youth Council, established in 2009. We can talk about the Cameroon National Civic Agency for Participation and Development, put in place in 2012, which was supposed to give Cameroonian an avenue to participate in the building and the development of the country through projects who were supposed to be trained, because the last institution I've mentioned was supposed to train some of these youths and help them in financing their projects so as to make them in their ways to develop our countries and help in such a way that it could do. But this is not what is happening. Some of these institutions, even the selection of these youth in this institution is done how? It's not done through merit. It's done through personal connection. I was saying after training, there are about 1,000 of these youths who came out from this institution, I think from Southwest region, who said after the training, the financial, because normally the text of the institution said after the training they were supposed to benefit a rate, I think 1 million. After having a good project, they benefit from 1 million so as to finance the project. But only those who are have some relation with the officers of the institution benefit from this financial help. So I repeat it, the problem. Before coming, I will come. You asked me the question.
No,
Mr.
Abdouraman.
Let me finish.
Briefly. Yeah.
Just about you talk about Honorable Cabral Libi. Even what Honorable Cabral Libi is doing is exceptional, because few of the youth of today are believing to what he was doing. When he started this thing, few of us believed to what he was supposed to do. Even today, many of us are doubting. So, what if I can say something? Cabral Libi is a youth, and is somebody that has a good project for this Cameroon. For those who think that there's something good that can be done in this country, I think they could stand up and try and question really what this young man is trying to present to us.
Yeah. Good evening to all panelists, Mr. Leo. If someone can show or mention a minister arrested for embezzlement, it would definitely be a minister prosecuted for something else but embezzlement as a crime. Mr. EWANE writing from Kumba. Mr. Leo, there are two categories of youth: those who want to make it without stress, those who are willing to make it with their sweat. Both of these categories have no trust in the government. In fact, they already long lost confidence and hope in the government. They know their own, they are their own. Okay, Mr. EWANE, good evening to you. Oops, the messages will not even allow me. Good evening, Mr. Liu. The Cameroonian youth are not the cause of their own problems, but the bad governance is the cause. Tung Bertrand, writing from Boya Fonge Peter, says, good evening, and thanks for hosting such a great program. A country with no rule of law like Cameroon leaves young people in faint for themselves. Take a look at the educational programs. It's disastrous with no focus. The policies to support young people are put in place, but not domesticated, not shared publicly, and no monitoring and accountability process. Peters, writing from Boya, good evening to you. Peters, Tiku Felix says, Mr. Lee, I want to hail the youth population in this country because they are fighters. They have been sidelined from every aspect regarding planning for the future. Based on the government, youth wouldn't have reached even where they are today. 29 years ago, there was nothing like concours, no job, no mechanism to teach on the importance of vocational training. The policy of the country exalts government jobs but shy from self-employment trainings. Good evening to you, Tiku Felix. Tiku Felix says the youth have done enough. We don't see them do so much in politicking. That is where decisions are supposed to be made now. They say opportunities are not given them, but the Bible says they take it by force.
Mr. Leo,
power is not given now.
Yeah, what makes me to laugh first is because actually in the context of Cameroon, we are yet to know who is really a youth.
Okay.
In the context, you know, we have youths at the Senate, we have youths at the National Assembly, and even at the presidency. But that is not where, or the direction at which I look at, from which I look at. I think youths, are they the cause of their problems? To an extent, yes. And I will explain why. It is clear, there is no gainsaying that our government is a failed government when it comes to promoting youthful skills. Like I give you an example of the young man who tried to fabricate a helicopter in Bamenda. Until today, they say he was taken to the Prime Minister's office. It's like he was just taken there as a photo to be watched. There, after some time, the project died down. We know of some who have tried to use their own God-given potentials, like in Kumbo, to come out with electricity project that can help their community, of which the government was supposed to put a part on their back so that these projects are developed. It is also true that our government, since we are dealing with a government that 99% of them are used to lies, public lies telling, and of course they are not they cannot be used as models to the youths. The youths have actually lost touch of such elders as models. It is equally true that our government is made up of politicians who can do everything bad to get at their goals. Some of them even recruit these youths into their political ranks, of which the youth do not even master the objectives of these political parties. They use some of these youths as their commercial agents to sell their political agendas for their personal ego. And at the end of the day, these youths are not given any place of their own. But when we look at all this, we cannot lose sight of the fact that the youths have been so much sleeping on the road to their destiny. Because I don't think it is also the government that teaches some of these youths to go for scamming, which is very, very present in our midst today. It is not this government that teaches the youth to love big cars, of which they don't have the means to acquire the cars. They don't want to take one step at a time. They want to live in affluence because they are seeing other youths. Maybe you want to look youths whose parents are ministers, they can steal government monies and buy them cars. You want to just jump from your bed and become like them. Some of these youths, as I tell you, a journalist, you will bear with me how difficult it is to get 80% of these youths to even come to platforms like this and speak. Some of them can't even go for 5 months without knowing what is happening in their country. They don't listen to the radio, they don't follow the television, they don't even read newspapers. And so they are not well equipped with information that can push them ahead. Some of them even missed information opportunities. I tell you, Mr. Leo, that there are concours that they can launch in this country, and some youth end up not writing because they were not informed, because they don't go for information. So to say that to put the government at the center of this blame will be a bit biased. We have to look at it. It's a shared responsibility. And where is most of the failure of the youth coming from? We have 3 partners to blame here. The home, we call it in the educational language, the informal learning sector, where the child gets the first lessons of life. We have the school, and now we have the society, where we quite often, you know that in the yesteryears, our parents used to spend more time with us at home. But today, there are some parents that their kids see them only in the morning, and then always see them the next morning. They have completely lost touch with the happenings at home. The parents cannot even determine changes in their children because they are always absent. So I think the government is failing, we know. But the youth also need to come to their senses to know that they have to join hands and take the destiny into their hands, not by picking up guns. Information is power. If you have a youth at the age of 30 who can go from Monday to Sunday without watching television, without reading a newspaper, without listening to the radio, but playing party food, gambling every day, I think that is where the youth need to sit up.
Okay, they need to sit up. Good evening, Mr. Liu. Speaking from my observation, the serious youths are made to learn that they need power to influence this government. I have very much faith and hope in my generation of youth. Tita Peace, writing from Yaoundé. Good evening to you. Peace, this one says, it should be noted, Mr. Leo, those in power have dual nationality and are not Cameroonians, hence they lack the will to valorize the potential of the youths and development of our country. Elvis Lyunga is writing there from Boya. Good evening. Is Adele writing from Kumba. Good evening to you, Adele. Good evening, sir. Is Charles Bong writing from Bamenda, sir. If those ministers can be brought to Bamenda for justice, I think the government will have a good answer. Okay. I don't know what justice is in Bamenda. This is Moses from Muya. Good evening, Mr. Liu. I regret to be a Cameroonian because those ministers only think of their stomach. Work hard to become a minister so that I can change Cameroon. Good evening, Mr. Liu. I so much love your program. I'm Iyabi Kadinaisa from Guti. Iyabi, you are writing for the third time. This one says, please. It's like, oops. Good evening to you, Mr. Liu. This is Asong from Boya. The truth is that the people governing us have no regard for the people. They are just okay. Good evening. The government have not done enough for the youth, but a big problem facing Cameroonian youth is alcoholism. Most Cameroonian youth spend so much on alcohol and little on making their lives better. Dinze, writing from Yaoundé. Yes, I was going to look at this. There are many aspects I wanted us to treat, but we are left with 10 minutes. But I want us to look at the common excuse, the lack of capital. We don't have capital, but most youths patronize entertainment joints that also we are the core clients of most entertainment joints in Cameroon.
Well, I'm sorry to say, but I think that I was talking with the owner of my media Prime, and he told me how he started his business, how he started small, how he raised capital, and how he grew his empire. I think that all of us can also get there. On the issue of financing, let's assume that youth don't have capital, but then government has a lot of money that has been pumped into the youth sector. I think since 2007, we've had countless projects aimed at empowering youth. I cannot exhaust the list of projects that we have in this country. We have first the Ministry of Youth and Civic Education that is there to empower the youth, to ensure that they get jobs, socioeconomic insertion. We have a national youth policy that was elaborated in 2015, and he said there already, the policy says that the Cameroon population is made up of 70% of the youth, and most of them fall between the ages of 15 and 35. And that this population is growing, is only growing and increasing, and there's need to create jobs for them. And it is because of this that the country has created the National Youth Employment Fund. The country has created a multi-purpose youth empowerment program, and there are multi-purpose youth empowerment centers in all the 360 subdivisions of this country. There's one in Boya, and it's everywhere. I don't know how many youths have gone there to get assistance. We have PIFMAS. There's the project for the socio-economic insertion of youths in the country. That was rolled out in November of 2007, and government pumped a lot of money into this for youths to come and get skills. I think it was at the beginning it was for youths in the far north, in Adamawa and the northwest region, for them to get skills and open businesses and run their lives. We have the fifth being the Rural and Urban Youth Support Program, what they call PAGEU, that was launched in 2007 with lots of money put into it for youth to get training and start businesses. We have and this PAGEU project was hatched when Cameroon qualified as one of the poorest countries in the world, the poorest and most indebted country in the world. We remember the highly indebted poor countries initiative, the HIPIC, when Cameroon qualified and their debts were cancelled. They were supposed to use this money and pump back into the economy, and they put some of this money into the Rural and Urban Youth Support Program, PAGEU. And we also have what is currently going on, the 3-year youth support program that was launched by the head of state. I think 102 billion francs CFA is at the disposal of youths who, if they want to empower themselves, I think the head of state said 1.5 million youths are supposed to be to benefit from the program, and 500,000 youths every year for 3 years to benefit from this program. And these programs are to empower youths in the domains of craftsmanship, of livestock, of agriculture, and digital economy, among others, so that they can survive without thinking of writing concours. Because the problem we have in Cameroon is the concours mentality. People read, they go to school to pass exams. When they pass exams, the next thing is to register for concours. When they register for concours and what they call grow loan camps, they collect loans from banks and they go abroad. We've had civil servants who have died in the wilderness going to Italy, struggling to go to Spain. Others have died in Latin America because they want to go to America. And most of us youth feel that the civil service is a heaven. But then we have seen today that the civil service is not the heaven that some of us used to think it was. Because if it is heaven, why would somebody go and die in the desert when they are principal or they are discipline master or they are vice principal in a school, a government school in Cameroon? They prefer to leave that job and go and die elsewhere. Why will somebody be a civil servant and prefer to be a ghost worker to collect money when they are not working anything? They stay abroad. So it means that there is money in the informal economy, there's money in the corporate world, there's money in the private sector, and government. Those who are saying, you asked about capital. Those who say there's no capital, for now, as I know it, the head of state gave 102 billion to add to the many programs, the PAGEU, initiative. We are
not seeing the money, except you can tell the youth to.
No, I remember, I think in 2014 or so, that the National Civic Service Agency for Participation and Development camped some youth in Tico. I think at Christ the King College. They camped the youths. They trained them on patriotism, that they should be patriotic, love for country, and also gave them skills. You know how the civil service agency works in other countries like Nigeria, neighboring Nigeria. They empower them to love Cameroon, to want to die for Cameroon, to want to stay in Cameroon and develop it. When at the end of this thing, they train some of the youth in pig farming, livestock, and other things, and at the end they gave them a grant.
Okay.
This grant was given to a group of 10 trainees, and they took this money. That was on the 13th of February that year, and they shared the money. The next day was Valentine's Day. They enjoyed the money with their girlfriends, and that was the end. So I'm saying that money actually exists. That even the youths who have been trained to be patriotic enough to love Cameroon are the same ones who the next day collect the money, they go to nightclubs and they drink beer, and Cameroon is classed among the very highest consumers of alcohol in the country. And I think that is what we are proud of. And recently we're importing crude palm oil. Cameroon importing crude palm oil. When we have fertile soils everywhere, when we have the possibility of farming palms and milling or even selling the fruits to CDC or palm oil plantations and other concerns that have mills that can buy these fruits. Yeah, so I think that in terms of capital, the capital is there.
Okay, yeah, very briefly.
Yes, let me just cue in. Yes. Now, as a civil society actor, I have come to realize that the youth, they lack information, they lack a proper orientation, they lack orientation, and just to name but this few. Now, when I talk of lack of orientation, most of the institutions or the management team put in place by the head of state, like we have the Youth Connect, which was actually founded in 2019, and interestingly, the head of state actually gave a go-ahead for it to be also be implemented in Cameroon. Now, the challenge here is most of these things, once they are created, these institutions, those who are managing it bring in their family members whom sometimes are not even interested in it. And the youth who are interested are not informed about it. Because whenever there is a project like Project you write a project and you submit it, and the next thing you realize that somebody who had not even written a project, if you were to look at his or her project compared to yours, was actually giving that small money, that 1 million or maybe or so for that purpose. But the truth is that most of the young people, they have a problem of their own, and the problem is that they tend to believe that because of the mismanagement engine of the state and non-accountability of what is given to them, this is where we find ourselves. So the state, the government still has a responsibility to ensure that by their action, because when most of this money is given, I remember I have a friend who benefited from the project, and he embezzled the money. He did not even invest that money, but it was given to him. Yes, you get. So others who do not know, most of these things when they are launched, they inform people from just within, and those who really are in need of these things, they do not get them. So I want to believe that if the government or the local authorities would take it upon themselves, this is where I said it some time ago. Please just give me one more minute. I said it some time ago that if some of the parliamentarians will go back to their constituents, even develop questionnaires to understand what is happening on the ground, most of these problems will be solved. But most of them they fold their arms when the 3 million francs which is given to them to manage also, they'll go buying bags of rice to distribute to the people, which is not really the problem the youths are facing.
Okay, we are out of time except Mr. Ndiwum. Vous avez
oui,
30 secondes.
Oui, 30 secondes. Monsieur Léo, ce problème des jeunes au Cameroun nous écoeure. Nous avons ça à cœur. Nous sommes tous ici sur ce plateau jeune. Nous voulons et nous demandons très sérieusement au gouvernement d'arrêter de nous créer des institutions qui ne nous servent plus à rien. Il y en a tellement qui ont déjà été créées. Mon confrère l'a cité et j'en avais également tellement à citer. Ils doivent tout simplement implémenter des résultats venant de ces institutions. Ils doivent tout simplement revoir l'organisation de ces institutions et mettre en exergue tout ce qui est sous les tiroirs pour que les jeunes au Cameroun puissent avoir une place. Et qu'aujourd'hui, j'ai également un message à l'endroit des jeunes au Cameroun. Nous savons qui nous gouvernent, arrêtons d'attendre de ces gens, prenons notre destin en main, essayons de faire quelque chose. Il y a encore des sueurs d'espoir. Donc,
c'est plus d'une minute déjà.
Oui, de toutes les façons, nous allons arriver au bout du tunnel. Croyez au projet de société d'un Cameroun qui protège et libère les énergies du PCN.
I think
l'honorable Cabral.
Effectivement, le PCN c'est l'honorable Cabral.
Well, Mr. Leo, I think that when preparation meets with an opportunity, it gives birth to success. Youths, take your destiny into your hands, and to the government, give the youths their own place. Let their voices count in decision making in this country, so that things can move ahead.
Okay, good evening to you, Ezwa Kizito. Just call so that we can discuss after this program. This one says, I'm Hilary from Boya. It seems Mr. Tilarious believes in this government so much. If COVID-19 money has been embezzled by those same ministers, what more of 1 billion from the head of state to assist the youths? Okay, this one says, Mr. Leo, good evening. A wonderful program going on and so educative. My own contribution is that they should put age limit in drinking habits in Cameroon. Edwin from Bomenda, that will help the youth in this country. I think we should do a program on this drinking habit. Good evening, Mr. Liu. I like your outfit. Please tell my brother that patriotism is not thoughts or forced on people, but it is the sense of belonging, one love for his nation, which is not forced. Gilbert Neba is writing from Douala. Good evening, Mr. Liu. How can the youth be empowered positively when religion is being excluded as a relevant subject? Kum Bertrand. I'm not sure it's I did religion. I think the government is putting in good money to empower the youth, but my problem is that the government needs to change or improve in their communication strategies to reach out to the youth using all the media outlets. Mr. Bean, you are doing a wonderful job by speaking for Cameroon. Information is hidden in Cameroon. The government needs to invest in communication. Congrats to all the panelists. Congratulations to you too, Mr. Governor Simon, doing a lot for the media world out there in the southwest region and Cameroon. Good evening, Uncle. Good evening to you too. Good evening, Mr. Leo. I'm Tita Apollo, writing from Yaoundé. I just want to appreciate the impact towards the youth through your media. Okay, thank you very much, Tita. We'll continue doing that. Good evening, Mr. Leo. I'm very sorry with this, the state of things in Cameroon. Good evening, Mr. Leo. Good evening to the panelists here in Cameroon. Embezzlers are protected by the government. Name me just one minister that has embezzled government money and said money was recovered. None. This is Kidze Julius Ibwe, writing from Douala. This one is talking of not getting informed on job opportunities. We should know the youth change because the information sector has proven weak and false. Okay? Please, you have to continue. We have to end here. We say thank you to you, Atia Tilarious, for answering present for today's edition of the program.
Thank you, Leo. I want to say that the youths have lost trust in the government. And government needs to communicate to prove itself that the youth can once more trust them. And particularly for youth in the northwest and southwest regions, they should take the opportunities. Because I remember the Minister of Youth Affairs was embarrassed in Bamenda that the mayors told him that those chosen for the Youth Connect were not of the region, that they were youth from elsewhere that came just to collect the envelopes. And I think the youth in the regions should rise up and apply for these grants, so that if they don't get it, we know that it's part of the marginalization agenda. Okay,
thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much, Mr. Liu. I want to thank somebody whom I admire so much in training the youth. We have Prof. Ernest Moliwa. I think he's actually so committed in training the youth. Yes, I think he's doing a great job with the entrepreneurship course in the University of Boya, where so many youth do testify to me that their lives have changed and he's changing lives.
Okay, thank you to you, Mr. Abdouraman, for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Leonard. It would sound strange. I would like to invite all the youth. We have said here that is 70% of the population of Cameroon. We have the destiny of this country in our hands. I want to invite them to go and register in an electoral list, so that the next time we have the opportunity to throw these people out, let us throw them out.
Mr. Ndiwum, thank you for coming.
It's always a pleasure, and thank you for giving us the opportunity.
Okay, we also want to say thank you to you, Desmond and Eli, Bertrand, Noel, and you all who took time off to watch this program. Thank you, Tabit Tambe Bryant, who is supervising the work we do out here. Stay blessed. Bye-bye.
Bienvenue dans un nouveau